Hi. Alrighty. Welcome to Mysterium After Dark. We are live right now, and we're trying to get Alex to get part of the show. He's just having a little bit of a glitch with his audio, but I think he's going to be able to figure it out. Maybe if he gets his headset working, then that's going to be helpful to him. But then we're right now in the midst of, like I said, we're all locked up right now. Everybody's on the lockdown quarantine mode, and there's a lot of lessons that we all can learn from this. Partially speaking, hi Alex, looks like he's on the chat already. Partially speaking, we're in a scenario now where we're understanding the biological side of it, but then since Alex is a very skilled practitioner of the spiritual arts, I want to discuss with him today the implications of the earthly consciousness about this virus. I mean, like, what could this mean from a metaphysical level? Could this mean that, like, the universe is striking back? Could this mean that we are in the midst of some sort of great purging? So we're actually using a new model right now. It's called StreamYard, and I'm going to be... Okay. I'm gonna have to call him. How am I gonna do this? All right, Alex, I'll call you if you're watching on. I'm gonna do this. Tricky. Okay, let's call him here. And then I'm gonna try to stream this so that he can get me, because apparently he can't get the audio. Okay. Okay, Alex, you can hear me. That's great. Don't answer the call. Don't answer the call. I'll have to cancel that. All right. If you can hear me, then I'm going to need to get you on the camera. We're just trying some new tech right now. Alex, thank God. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Hey, doing great.
Wow,
Great to see your
good.
face, hear your voice.
Yeah. So,
really good.
Can I share that we actually assumed that you were sickened by the plague?
Yeah. That's the working assumption right now. I had all the symptoms, and they were right along that timeline. I think I was better by day 11, which is a little bit faster. Usually it's about day 17, but yeah, that's my operating assumption right now.
Well, thank God that you're safe. I mean, one of the few PhDs in this country that I take serious in this world that I take seriously, and we wouldn't want to lose.
Right.
We wouldn't want to lose one of our great teachers. But I know you're all about your subtle ecologies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't get more subtle than this ecology known as the virus.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get your take on that, as in, like, what's happening. Hi, Christine Calix. You're actually on the air. We actually saw your comments. See, this is look at this new module of ours that when people comment, they pop up. This is so awesome.
This is amazing.
All right. So, like, run it for me as the Grandmaster Kupumba of the Continuum method. And you're all about energies, ancestors, the environment, the land. What do you feel that this virus is?
Yeah. Rob, it's great to be on the show.
It's an honor to have you back. I missed you, bro.
Yeah, I missed you too. I just want to say hello to all your listeners all over the world. Really a real honor to be back here. Yeah. So I've been saying for about a year. I think right after last time I saw you in person, I came back, started doing some deeper work with clients, and I started talking about the Dragon Age. And I was like, the Dragon Age it should be starting in about a year, and should start really get rolling. I was saying about maybe 2022, 2023. I think it's really coming in now. One of the things that I wasn't tracking so carefully, I think, was that these changes happen. They're not just happening within the human psyche. When I talk about the Dragon Age, I'm talking about something that's a shift that's happening. And I was focusing more on it's this natural developmental process in the human psyche that's going to happen. But if you know this from my classes, and you know this from any reading that you've done of my theory, that the human psyche is changing in conjunction with all these other psyches around it that are
Yeah, you
in the
mentioned that when we were
subtle
together.
ecologies.
Yeah, the
Um,
subtle ecologies.
so the coronavirus is part of that larger grouping of ecologies, these larger communities. So what happens is throughout its entire history of change, the human psyche has been changing. And when I talk about the human psyche, I mean the collective human psyche,
Yeah.
all of the habits and intuitions and spiritual resources and karma of the human psyche. It's constantly evolving, but what's happening. It's constantly co-evolving. It's co-evolving with all these other powers around it,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of intelligence in ways that I won't presume to understand, and I think very few people, if anyone, would presume to really understand. There are a lot of these intelligences that are bubbling up. So right now, we're hitting this moment of the beginning of crisis in the human psyche, the beginning of this meltdown. It does happen to be one key point is it does happen to be localized in what's going on in the United States, and that's rippling out across the world. The United States has been kind of this core node, and as we're seeing right now, that node is getting broken down very significantly, and the United States may be removed from the stage as sort of this fulcrum in the human psyche. But anyway, right now it's very much in it. Not a big surprise to me that the United States is the most infected country in the world right now. I mean, it's a complete ghost town everywhere, as I know it is in a lot of places in the world. So we're entering this period of death and rebirth. The whole world is being caught up in this vortex of energy that's being constellated here in the United States, and we're moving into really a period of a test, and it's really kind of a bifurcation point. If we negotiate this well, we'll move into the next stage. If we don't, the human psyche will really be retooled in some very rough ways. So what we're looking at.
How are you judging us? I just want to interrupt you. You said if we handle this well, based on your professional observation of how the human psyche is handling this, what would your grade be for it? I mean, are we doing it well? Or are we effing this up?
Well, I'll say we're doing well only in that everything is in complete chaos and we're running around with our hair on fire, which is exactly what happens at these points. This is correlated a lot with the conjunction in astrology right now. I don't know if how many of your listeners are familiar with astrology. The United States specifically is going through its Pluto return right now, which is Pluto conjunct Pluto. It's this deep dive into the underworld, and so you got to be ripped apart before you come out. It's the tragicomedy of the human race now. I think I would like to say lean more on we're doing well, because we tend to in these crises, one of the things when they first start, we're like, oh, we blew it, like everything's becoming unraveled, but that is a natural evolutionary point. And this. Let's shift to the virus for a moment. The virus isn't a whole lot of fun. Even if you have very mild symptoms like I do, it's a painful, wet or dry cough. Your fever could spike. Of course, people are in comas, being intubated, and then the body count is high. Let's pull the lens back a bit. The virus is, it's even a question, is it a living being? But in the work I do, stones
Yeah.
are living.
So what more viruses? Yeah, I want to get your take on that. We didn't talk about that in the Continua. For those of you just tuning in, Dr. Brzezinski is the founder of a unique energy modality called the Continua. He was supposed to come here in April. We had everything set up. And I was telling you, I was like, dude, don't risk it. I was like, do not risk it. And I was like, I called it. I called it.
Yeah,
I was like,
you did. You definitely
and I
did.
was like, I don't want you to get stuck in customs, and they're not going to let you through because you're a plague bear. And exactly that happened. So Alex Brzezinski is going to be coming most likely if things loosen up in April, end of April, fine. But then if not, maybe probably later on in the year because we really want to learn his healing modality. But going back to the Continuo, what is the Continuous official take on viruses? Living, not living?
Yeah. So living, but you gotta understand in the continual work, everything is living. Mountains are living, streams are living. So there's this life force and intelligence that correlates. I've had encounters in non-ordinary states of consciousness with viruses. There was a different. I got laid out by a just a I guess a regular cold virus. About 3-4 years ago, and had it actually in like a kind of a lucid dreaming state. The
shamanic state of consciousness.
Yeah. This perceived this virus that was like what it looked like was like a jellyfish that was like floating in my bedroom, and it had a tentacle down my throat into my lungs, and it was feeding on me. I woke up, caught it doing that, and it got like startled and like darted out the room. And I was like, and it was clear it was the virus that was doing this. And I was like, that's so weird. It's like, it was like 5 feet tall, and it was like in space and time. So we have to really pull back this sense of like collective intelligences. So we think of like, science is like, oh, a virus, it's like, a few microns wide. It's this tiny little thing. Like no, this is a field of intelligence, a field of intention that is embodied in this way that's very hard for the human mind to understand. I mean, I'm like, what does that even mean? That it's like, trillions of these viruses scattered throughout the planet, and yet it can constellate itself around a specific individual.
I have a question, if you don't mind me asking this. This is probably for the viewers. And if you're just tuning in and you're part of the StreamYard program on the fan page, if you actually comment, your comments can be seen on the actual broadcast. If you want to ask anything, me and Dr. Brzezinski can see it. What does the virus want? And I know you're not that kind of doctor, but I want to think more on like the metaphysical, higher consciousness, subtle ecology level thing. What does the Wuhan COVID-19 virus want?
Yeah. Is there a doctor in the house? Yes.
Right now,
over here.
Well, not actual doctor, but I mean, I want to get your take on it though.
I don't really know, but what I'm sensing, I'm looking at it functionally. I'm looking at, oh, wait a minute. Like I was looking at right now. I was looking at like, are we looking at a civil war? Are we looking at a revolution in the States? Are we looking at World War III? Are we looking at a massive social upheaval? Because I was like, there's some factor that's going to come in, and a collection of factors really that's going to trigger this rebirth of the human psyche, going through this time and entering this era of new capacities and sort of phasing out old ways of being. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, there it is. It's first time. And I don't, it's kind of interesting right now to think about, is this a once in a 50-year event, once in a 100-year event, once in a 500-year event? I think as the fallout begins, we're going to see that this is the beginning of, once in a couple 1,000-year event. Now, I want to be absolutely clear. I think the coronavirus is one actor. We're going to see other agencies coming in. Some of them will be from within the human psyche, and some of them will be from outside of the human psyche. This is just the COVID-19 is just the opening act. And I don't think things are going to,
Wow. So it's just the trailer. Are you saying that something worse is going to come?
something more intense. Now, again, worse is how we deal with it and how well we negotiate it. If we negotiate it well, it is possible. I think it's unlikely, but it's possible. This could actually be a very smooth birth. This happens, and in moments when a psyche goes into deep crisis and regeneration and death and rebirth, sometimes the death and rebirth is very smooth. If you think about times in your own life, when you're going through times of death and rebirth, sometimes you're like, wow, that was actually pretty smooth. It was a major transformation. It's probably not going to be smooth. It's probably going. There's probably people are going to suffer. Many people are going to die. People are going to be very confused as the old ways are swept away.
Yeah, because
So
here's
I
one
think-
thing. If I could just interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
This virus is showing to us all of the systems that have been put in place by humanity that are not working. Like a lot of people can say healthcare, for example. Okay, healthcare in America, I know, is not exactly the best thing. But
Yeah.
even in nations that pride themselves with A+ healthcare, they're getting overwhelmed by this bug. All right. Secondly, you said something about the human psyche. And I was talking about this with Professor Hassan in the last episode, that the collective energy of humanity is burnt out. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Burnt out. Like you were working your ass off. I was working my ass off. We were tired.
Yeah.
And imagine if the whole universe is all crying, hey, I need a break. Guess what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This could have been the most epic hyper sigil in the world to give humanity the break that it needs. All right. So I wanted to get your take on that. As in, do you think that this is kind of like an unconscious manifestation of the human consciousness to slow down and appreciate and smell the coffee?
Yes. Yeah. That was something too that came up. I was like, whoa, I've been laid off from work. My wife's been laid off from work. Like, oh, like this is going to be like freak out time. But it was actually like, wow, we have all this time on our hands to connect to other people, to just take in the textures of our life. And I think this is happening collectively. One of the age we're moving out of is the Jinn age, this age that's much more of a industry, things speeding up, getting immersed in technology. That's given us certain capabilities and allowed us certain achievements. But it's an age where you're really focused on refining the world and working the world. That's moving out. We're moving into this dragon age, which is all about quiet attention. So I think you've nailed it, and I think COVID is the handmaiden that's sort of bringing us into that age where one by one, big systems that are refined, filled with a lot of energy, are falling away, and we're going to find ourselves more at home in a place that's a little cooler, a little slower, a little quieter, a little more back to basics.
All right, astrologically, you mentioned about a Pluto return. I'd just like you to inform the viewers. For those who don't know what it means, that we're in like some Pluto something. I'm not an astrologer. The world is going through that right now. And how long are we looking at this period for?
Okay, so yeah. I just want to be clear. This is something just the United States is going through, but because we tend to be, the United States has its own collective psyche, right? Its own collective shadow, its own collective unconsciousness. Because of the way that we're much more interconnected than we think, and I'm not just talking about globally and in terms of commerce and money and militaries and things like that, but I mean in terms of the psyches of different nation states, different tribes of people, different groupings of people in whatever way. We're definitely connected. And right now, the United States is just been, and for I don't know, maybe at least half a century, the United States has been accreting this power and energy from the world. And the world is it's like a galaxy. It's like a small galaxy, and the rest of the world is sort of being drawn into it. But that galaxy that is the United States is starting to slowly kind of fragment and come apart, and it may recoalesce. Or the other, it's looking like, we're entering a more multipolar world where there will be these multiple vortices. And I hate to I hate to tell it to the Chinese military planners and other nation states as well. We're not moving into a unipolar world. It's not like one superpower is going to disappear and a new superpower is going to come in. It's going to be more multipolar. So anyway, just wanted to make that point about the significance of what the U.S. is going through. It's kind of like, you guys had it coming. Like you guys deal with your stuff, but the rest of the world, for better or for worse, is being dragged along for the temporary time frame. Okay, Pluto return. So some of your viewers may be familiar with that, like the Saturn return, right? I'll use this as an analogy. It's a little more smaller in scope and within the human lifespan, so you can track it a little bit more. Every 30 years, roughly, a little bit less, the human psyche goes through this moment where it has to build new structures. Now, the Saturn archetype, a little different than the Pluto archetype. The Saturn archetype is more about growing up, maturity, and it comes in and it wants you to liberate your authentic self. And it does that by just crushing and grinding away all of the inappropriate armoring that you've developed. Okay, this happens every 30 years, happens again around when you're like 56, and then maybe again when you're really old. But what happens at the return? This is like what I want to really focus on, is the return is that moment you've gone through one full cycle and everything that has developed begins to fall away, and you conserve. There's this moment where you go in and your psyche reaches out, and for those things that are working, those things that are really authentic, and then everything else kind of ends. So it's a sort of final hurrah. Certainly the death and rebirth. Okay, it's
like graduation, right?
It's like graduation, and it's like, okay, now we're beginning the new cycle. Like, hopefully you let go of as much as possible and you evolved as much as possible. Okay, Saturn, all about structures, maturity, responsibility, these sorts of things. It can be kind of for some people, it can be kind of a depressing time because you're really faced with like, wow, I was really doing a lot of stuff that was not really was not aligned with who I was. Okay, switching to Pluto.
What about Pluto?
Okay, so Pluto, much more hardcore. Let's just be honest. It's the planet, the archetype, the god of so death and rebirth, regeneration, but also mass collective energy. When you have Pluto transits going through the sky for the whole world, you have things like nuclear weapons are developed, but also intensification of energy, wars over oil. But you also have this collective liberation. The last big global Pluto transit that we had that really left a lasting impact was in the 1960s, the late 1960s. And you kind of look at like America and China. America had, as far as I could tell, had pretty awesome. It was a Pluto-Uranus aspect. It had this awesome like liberation and all this like cool like groovy creativity, and the erotic was liberated, and it was pretty good. China went through the Cultural Revolution, which was absolutely horrific. And China's still like deeply deeply traumatized by that. So Pluto harnesses these strong collective energies, but it's a power that's hard to comprehend, and we often think of it as like the lord of the underworld, the lord of death, the instinctual powers. So in terms of what the United States is going through right now, it's really this encounter with the biological. Like even I was like, wait, did I actually like miss that obvious like Pluto archetype of encounter with your natural, with the natural world, encounter with the stuff that you can't see. So it's things you can't see, hidden underworld riches. There's this little big thing around kleptocracy, people who steal wealth for themselves. Pluto's empowers them briefly and then is very rough on kleptocrats if they don't use their
How
power.
long do these Pluto things last though? Because like the Saturn returns like usually like a year, right? But then the Pluto returns, how long do these things usually float
like
for?
Saturn return, there's a year in the middle of it that's pretty intense, and then kind of a year on either side. You could kind of people have different different takes on how long it is. 4 years max for the Saturn return. The Pluto return. So the Pluto cycle is about it's about 250 years. It's I think a little bit less than that, but it's on that order. And the actual time period. So it's going to be about a 10-year period, but there's.
So we're going to be in this craziness like we're in now for 10 years.
I'm according to my working theory, and I'm drawing on some of the work on generational theory around this. Some of the work of Neil Howe, Fourth Turning. He lays out some very convincing data. He and his co-author, they predicted the 2008 crisis back in 1991 with a great degree of accuracy. So I'm kind of following their lead a little bit on the generational piece, because it's very precise, really year by year. So right now 2008 was sort of the very first reverberations of this sort of crisis period. We basically things are really heating up now. We're reaching the peak now, or the beginning of the peak, and then.
All right, I got to interrupt you because we're going to go on our first break. It's 8:30 on the clock here in Manila. We're going to take a couple minutes break. They're going to move us to the private chat, and they're going to play their stingers. But then you'll still be there, guys. For those, Dr. Alex Buzinski, founder of the Continuum Method, here on Mysterium After Dark. So V81 team, if you want to play the break, you're welcome to do it right now. Stay tuned. We're going to continue talking more about all this COVID crazy.
Sa V81 Radio kahit saan. We are now on your Amazon Echo devices. Just say, Alexa, play V81 Radio at i-enjoy ang inyong mga paboritong Pinoy music 24/7. Sabihin lang, Alexa, play V81 Radio. Tunog Pinoy, Tatak Pinoy, the future of radio. This is your all-hits, all-Pinoy internet radio station. This is V81 Radio Worldwide.
Ito ang paborito ng bawat Pilipino. Basta all hits, all Pinoy, panalo. Merong kwentong iyakan at tawanan. Kahit nasaan ka man, ito'y mapapakinggan. Ito ang radio mo. Ito ang radio mo. V81 Radio. V81 Radio. Dahil mahal namin kayo. V81 Radio. V81 Radio. Para sa inyo ito, V81 Radio.
Looks like we're back, boys and girls. Yeah, and welcome back to Mysterium After Dark. Alex, you there? All right, they're going to add you in. Hey, buddy.
Hey, good to be
All right,
back.
so here's the thing I'm going to ask you. As a man of the earth, in other words, you're very much connected to the lands and the environments around you. Would you say that this is also the environment hitting back for the abuses that mankind has done to it? Is this kind of like a warning shot, or is this kind of just like one of those things that just happen naturally?
Yeah, not really. I mean, to be honest, there's a part of my psyche that does feel like, you know, hey, come on, humanity, like you've been abusing the planet. It's time for you to take your knocks. But I don't think I think that is in itself a sort of human arrogance of like, oh, we're such this villain, and now, you know, we need to be punished by the cosmic powers. I think it's a much more natural thing. I think in some sense, the intelligences of this planet, the Gaia intelligence, or the collectives of different species minds, they knew this was coming for a long time. And I think even in some sense, the human species knew, like the collective intelligence of the human species, we've known, like, we're going to be going through this maturational period, and that during this last Jinn age, we were going to get real crazy with technology. We were going to get really self-absorbed, really lost in the screens, and using these weapons of mass destruction. And we knew, on some very deep level, we knew.
Mhm.
And then we're going to be asked to grow up. So I feel like this is really this thing where we're just being asked to grow up now. But it's a very serious threshold. It's a very major threshold in the entire human community, that we're really things are gonna look very, very different. I think 200, 300 years from now.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are going to be around 200 and 300 years ago. So let's kind of look like, what will life look like after, let's say, the next year? What do you predict? I mean, like, even in America, it's supposed to be like the seat of power of the Western world. Right now, how do I say, we don't even know where's safe. Like back in the day, if this happened here in Asia, I would have flown back home with my family. But now it's like nowhere is safe.
I know.
So,
that's really interesting, right? Yeah. Yeah, my wife's family is from Mindoro. They have water, they have ability to grow food, and they have relative security, relatively safe. And there's a group of people who you can rely on. We were like, geez, maybe we're in the wrong part of the world right now.
Yeah, that's actually funny that you said that, because like I said this in my previous episode, I actually feel safer here than I do over there. Because like, worst case scenario, I could be taken care of. Back home, it's like, I don't think the healthcare is kind of like set up to handle any of this.
Yeah, and we don't want to underestimate the importance of human bonds, and the Western psyche. Europe and the United States, and I guess Australia and Canada, and maybe a few other places. We really honed this, the individual, the power of the individual. But very beautiful. I love being an empowered individual in the American society, and having a certain amount of ability to just go inside and develop my interiority. But we kind of, I think we sort of, as the West, as the modern psyche, we kind of push that as far as I think we want that to go right now.
Yeah, it went beyond individualism and went borderline selfishness already.
Selfishness, and also, I mean, this thing that we talk about in philosophy, that the epistemological shift, how we see the world. So fake news, basically.
Yeah, that became a real epidemic for the past how many years? Yuck.
Yeah, because we're and that's a factor of the individual. It's like, oh, I am going to claim my own unique way of seeing the world. Okay, that's awesome. That's just one of the greatest things. But if everybody's doing that all the time, and there's no greater coherence to the system, you get people saying, no, coronavirus isn't really a thing, and
it's a conspiracy created by the Democrats.
Yeah.
Well, the Democrats are so powerful that they can create viruses now. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what's funny? Hey, nice cat behind you. Hello, kitty.
Yes, that's Kyle.
I don't really want to get political about things, but people here in the Philippines are complaining about the way the government is handling the scenario here. But quite frankly, I think that the government's handling it worse there than they are here, because the numbers are like hitting astronomical proportions there. Well, here we've only got like 3,000 cases so far. There, you're at like what, 800,000 already? So it's
I guess 200,000 as of yesterday.
I stand corrected, but it's like,
it's huge,
especially with all the resources. You'd think that they could actually strong arm this and get everybody on the same page, but they didn't. So I said, it seems to me no matter where you go, it's not safe. It's like everybody's fighting an invisible enemy right now.
Yeah. So I think it's the groups that are, or the polities, the nation states, the corporations, that really will thrive in this new environment are those that can move back to basics. And so that's what I think we're going to be seeing in the next few years. We'll see some more salvos coming in and shaking up the whole global system. I think globalism as we've known it, I think is on the way out. These things take these deeper superstructures take longer to change. So certainly the collection of nations, internationalism, that's here to stay for some time, but it's going to be deeply retooled. Energy, I think, is going to be a very interesting thing. Oil.
What do you mean by energy? Oh, you're talking about like actual like energy, like
energy. I'm an energy worker.
So I work in the oil sector. Okay, no, but like I wanted to ask you this one too. We have a term in philosophy, and you and I agree on this, called Hegelian dialectics. Okay, it's thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. I have a feeling that we are in the antithesis phase right now, and we are about to synthesize something new from all of this. What do you feel is going to be the result of all of this chaos happening right now?
In what time span are we looking at?
Maybe like give it 5 years. I mean, like a year to 5 years.
Five, but we're not going to see any results in 5 years. The chaos is going to get more severe. Probably in about 5 years, we're going to see a brief lull. Things will start to calm down and coalesce. 2035 is really when I'm sort of seeing as that's when we'll have kind of we'll have reached this new we'll have reached a plateau. The whole grand transformation in the human psyche, that we'll still be in the opening phases of that, but in the opening act will have the rubble will have stopped bouncing, and we'll be like, okay, this is where we are now in 2035. But basically, within that time frame, so within 5 years, it's who knows what's going to be happening in 5 years. We're just like energy is ramping up in the system. The baby is contractions are starting to happen, and the baby's starting to move down the birth canal. By 2035, in the sort of the mini birth within the larger birth of this particular phase, we'll be out the other side. We'll have a better idea. But like less globalization. There's a thing as you move into the Dragon Age where biology becomes important. So I think there's going to be a shift from the very early beginnings of a shift from the information sciences and the digital technologies to biosciences. Those are going to start coming online.
Which reminded me, I wanted to ask you, in the continua of the different allies that exist, because of course I am a graduate of the continuum method, and there are 12 allies and one central ally, which is basically the spirit or the center point. Which of the allies does the virus correspond to?
That's a really interesting question. Viruses, I tend to think of them a little bit in the Stone Nations kind of area, so that Naga, Jinn, energy, just because of their kind of their inorganic ness. They don't have a lot of fluids moving through them. But I think because of their collective, they operate as a collective, which that is more like Dragon and Titan. It is actually more underworldly.
Really? I actually would have thought it would have been like Deva or the monkey energy or the frog energy. Interesting.
Why is that?
Well, of course, look at how they spread. You know what I mean? Like a tadpole, how it can multiply. Similarly to a virus, how it also multiplies and spreads. So that you kind of have a similar mechanic. So, but then coming from, of course, the founder, would you consider that because of the prevalence of viruses, there might be an undiscovered ally that you haven't discussed?
Well, I think it's no, and as you're framing the question, no, because there's sort of they're sort of domains that include like different strata of life, and they're also I guess one clear point to make is like the allies are not, they don't correspond specifically to any one species. They're collections of species. So if we talk about like you talk about the monkey energy of the deva, it's just that there's a lot of those, like we say, really energy, a lot of those habits, traits, creodes, the morphic field of monkeys is sort of, a major player in there, or at least one that we can relate to primarily. And there's, I'm sure the viruses have contributed to all the formation of the allies. The stuff that's coming out of the biosciences just in the last 5 years, viruses, it turns out they're much more significant in the evolution of life on this planet than we thought. We thought that, the old school, we were like, they're just like this annoying, very, just sort of problematic. They're not even alive. They're just like, sort of garbage that's degrading the system. That's not true at all. The case is being made very persuasively now that viruses actually, like, we wouldn't be around. Life would not exist on this planet without some of the amazing things that viruses do.
Will you go as far as to say that the virus is actually an upgrade software for humanity's consciousness?
Wow.
Think about it. Pause. Think about it. If this didn't happen, I had some major breakthroughs in this past 2 weeks alone.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I had my ways set in a certain way, and I was stagnating.
Yeah.
And all of that got turned upside down.
Yeah.
I had to challenge the system. So it kind of like, although people are dying and people are suffering, and our frontliners are really giving they're breaking their backs and they're heroes because of this, I am actually seeing a kind of positive from this painful upgrade. Kind of like when you get a vaccine, it's not unheard of that you get sick for a day so that your body kind of learns to work against that virus you got vaccinated to. In this case, this can be kind of like a consciousness level vaccine, because now not only are people valuing relationships more, it's like people are going back to the fundamentals. Like, we are sitting down and having dinner. People forgot to do that.
Yeah.
We are reading the books that we bought that were gathering dust on our shelf. We are no longer hiding behind our excuses saying we're so busy because we have all the time in the world.
Yep.
So it kind of, from my own point of view, it sounds like the energy of the virus is kind of like an upgrade to human consciousness software. What's your take on that?
I love that, Rob. I love that you really honed in on that. Yeah, I think it's just our way of thinking. We tend to think of ourselves like humans in isolated units, but also our species. We tend to think of it as being walled off from the rest of the ecosystem, and we aren't. All of our gifts that we have, we create those gifts in conjunction with the natural world. Whether it's like the food we're eating, or millennia of watching the way animals do things, or the way we've co-evolved with plants. So everything is done in conjunction with other species, and this is why I use this term, the subtle ecologies. This happens at the deep.
There's that goddamn word.
Yeah, and I think it's challenging. For like a Western esotericist, right? Because there's a sense of like, I am the mage, I am this, sovereign emanation of God, and I sort of work my will in the world. But it's like, you're a bit player along with millions of other bit players who are all coming together in fields of greater or less coherence. And so I think the coronavirus is this player that's come in, that it's like, hey, if you pull the, like, I don't want to be glib about the disorientation, confusion, and suffering that this virus is causing. I don't want to underestimate that at all. But I also want to very emphatically state that things are happening at different levels all at the same time. You pull the lens back and you look at what's happening right now. It's like, there is a catalyst. The virus is working as a catalyst that's softening us up so that we can start to evolve more. And I think, and that's a hard one to get your mind around, especially if you're, lying in bed with a high fever, like coughing a lung up. But it's something to keep in mind, is we always, there are greater intelligences at work here than anything we can comprehend. And we all we do any achievement we make, we do it together. And if we fall, we do it together as well. Not just together, the humans within the human family, but together within the family of all of the species.
All right, your student Trisha from the Continuum
All
program.
right.
How can we harmonize the changing environment without making ourselves vulnerable to the virus?
Good question. Good question. Well, I think a lot of it is this sense of like going inward now, sort of slowing down and taking days one at a time. This is going to harmonize with our environment. The whole problem that we had was we've been moving too fast. We've been sort of
very true. Too much too soon.
Too myopically focused on granular details, the exchanging of little packets of data, this kind of thing.
Myopically, you know what? You just basically said we've been too selfishly obsessive compulsive. That's basically what you just said. Okay, please continue.
Yeah, Jinn age in its pathological state.
Is the Jinn age ending though?
Yeah.
Or is it done?
Yeah. No. It will be. This is what I'm saying. Basically, by 2035. The Jinn age will be done. The important thing, though, to realize is the ages really build on each other. The Firebird age ended, I don't know, maybe 500 years ago. We use like around when the Renaissance began. But we still carry all these Firebird sort of. The Firebird OS is still there underneath the
root core system.
yeah. So like in terms of the Firebird, for those who aren't familiar with the Continuum work, working with large visions, working with like ideologies and stuff, which were such a factor within the Jinn age the last couple hundred years. But that's sort of a retooling. So in the same way, technology will continue. But Trisha, to get to your point. Protecting yourself from the virus is you can totally do that and harmonize with the natural world. A lot of it is just stepping back, being more careful. One of the big things that we're seeing right now is globalization isn't really going to bounce back the way it has, because you can't transmit. You have to be careful about transmitting viruses. The day I got the what I think was the coronavirus, COVID. I was talking to a friend of mine, and his wife is a physician, and was familiar with some of the epidemiology. And I was like, what's she thinking about this coronavirus? And he's like, she's like not too worried about. It's the next pandemic.
So you think there's going to be another one after this?
I think there will be, as long as we start pushing our way into jungles and just like extracting resources rapidly, we're going to be thawing the permafrost. We're going to be unleashing microbes that at a much faster rate than we can deal with. Globalization also, this transmission, people hopping on a plane, patient zero hopping on a plane in Manila, and boom, suddenly this is everywhere. This mode of being is going to quiet down, and that's going to protect us more from the spread of pandemics like this.
All right, I have a question. You talk about the permafrost being melted and stuff like that. Is Cthulhu coming?
Is Cthulhu? You always ask me that.
I have to. It just seems like the time, man. It's like, I think that something, okay, everybody's fighting the virus, and if like a kaiju comes out of the freaking water, I feel like this story just got so much weirder. Oh my God.
Absolutely. I like the you had mentioned the kaiju before. I think that worked a little bit more for me, because the dragon archetype is the Leviathan. It's the underwater, the deep underwater power. Cthulhu as well would be in that neck of the woods or neck of the waters.
They sleep underwater for like hundreds of thousands of years, right?
Exactly.
And this exists in the Continua, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So
These dormant powers. I mean, it was not exactly like a kaiju. It doesn't emerge out of the wave, out from the waves. Firing missiles and
No, but the kaiju is like the more biological thing. What I'm talking more about is just like, could there be like these hidden powers that are slowly being woken up that are going to affect humanity in the next few years? It's like, literally speaking, that's why I asked Cthulhu, because Cthulhu is basically he who sleeps. So
Yes. Yeah. Well,
could there be energies, consciousnesses,
yeah,
things
absolutely.
like that sleeping?
I mean, not. I don't think literally. This sort of cryptozoa. I have colleagues who work in cryptozoology. You're like, these actual creatures are actually real, and they're. I have. I'm still a bit of a man of evidence, and I don't quite subscribe to that. But maybe I'll change my mind. But currently, sleeping archetypes, right? These.
Yeah.
And is Dragon Age is the awakening of the dragon energy, which means these deep repositories of karma, of ancestral wisdom. It's really a time of wisdom over, and you'll like this. It's the sort of honoring the darkness over the light. No negative connotation to darkness there, but the places we can't see, the mysteries we can't understand, and they have this quality of the Leviathan, the Titan, these massive entities that rise up, and they enable, part of what they enable through their sheer size, they enable the human collective and the transhuman collective to sort of stabilize and enter some new configurations. And they are like the devouring beast too. I think this is, some of these timelines are not so pretty. And if you're going through a Dragon Age negotiation and you're not doing it well, you get devoured. That's their thing, like Deva Age is more like things go into war. The age of Firebird Age, things go bad. It's more sort of mental enslavement, slave to the dream. Jinn Age, things go bad. It's sort of colonization, exploitation, trapped in these systems. Dragon Age, it's the lights go out, the great darkness arises, the lights go out. Everything goes quiet as the maw of the great beast swallows up everything.
I have a question since we have 5 minutes left on the show. Okay, for those who have not taken the Continua have basically 13 different allies. Okay, and this is something we wanted to ask you: could there ever be a possibility of the expansion of the allies? Now, I do understand that that's already your system and it works flawlessly, but the thing I wanted to ask is what if we just discovered something that could not be classified by any of the allies? It's just like, WTF is this? You know what I mean? Like, where would Alien come into play? You know what I mean? Like, where would a Klingon come into play? It's just like, so that's what I wanted to ask you. Will we ever see the quote unquote expansion pack to your Continua deck? You know what I mean? With all the latest upgrades to the Continua, like the Dingleberry and stuff like that. I mean, like, I just wanted to get your take on that because it's something as a scholar or as a student of the program, I'd like to know.
Well, I think, I developed that system, based on, all these years of exploring in non-ordinary states of consciousness. And I wanted to create a framework that was flexible enough to sort of, to handle as many different factors. It could basically, it was designed to handle anything, anything could come in. But there is one interesting piece is that, the universe is evolving. In any kind of system that we use to understand the world, it might be absolutely perfect in a certain time in a certain place. But as time goes on, or in a different place, you need to be able to alter the system. And in the Continua work, it's a path of inquiry, right? It's not a dogma. It's a path of inquiry. So we all the participants and the different.
You saw the comment.
Exactly. No, you should see, Trisha. That's so funny you say that because she says xenomorphs as I did I have my own deck of images that I use for myself. That's different than the public deck that we use in the courses. The image on my personal deck, I did this reworking of the dragon. And it really, I'm looking at it one day, I'm like, man, that looks a lot like a Geiger alien, a xenomorph. Yeah. So yeah, Trisha, absolutely right on. The beast, the stalker in the shadows, right? That comes out and it's just absolutely relentless and just rips you apart. So that's kind of what archetypes are supposed to do. They're supposed to be able to handle all these different valences, all this different particularity. It's a xenomorph over here. It's the great Leviathan over here. It's a kaiju over here. But to answer your question, Rob, everything's evolving. It's a path of inquiry. So if one of someone who's familiar with the continuum work goes deep, they're always coming to me. I mean, the people just from a year ago are coming to me and they're telling me stuff, and I'm like, whoa, okay, I gotta.
I have a question though, because I've observed the diagram. Because I have 2 minutes left. I've observed the diagram of the continuum, and I like how balanced it is. Because you have 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the right, 2 on the left, and then you've got your own higher energies of that, and you have the one in the center, nice and balanced. Okay, perfect. But if another one came along, wouldn't that kind of like unbalance the equation and like potentially piss off the other spirits?
Yeah, well, this happened in traditional Chinese medicine, right? They actually had a 4-element cosmology, and then they changed it over to a 5th element cosmology, and it's beautiful. You have both. You can do both.
Cool.
Why not both?
Well, I got to promote you for a second. For those of you who are interested in about Dr. Brzezinski, we invite you all to follow his official website, www.thecontinuawork.org. Now, we did plan on bringing him in April. It's not completely off, but it looks like it's kind of a long bet right now. But if and when things start balancing out, we're looking to have him for sure during the fall. We are bringing him back to the Philippines in 2020. We just don't want him to turn into a subtle ecology. Okay? So that being said, it's with great honor, Alex, that I thank you once again for being part of my show. You are a brother and a scholar. Follow him on Facebook on the Continual Work. He can answer whatever you want. He also teaches people in the Lake Tahoe area and online. So if you want to know more about that, feel free to message him. But without further ado, I'd just like to say thank you very much for being part of the show. And
thank you so much, Rob.
B81 team, thank you for making this happen. You guys are amazing. I'll see you all next week. Alex, you are the best. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. Thank you.